Okay, hey, folks, this is chapter 3. There are some important words that you probably have seen before, but I should probably just remind you of what those words are. One of those words is complementary, and all that means is any set of angles, usually two angles, that add up to 90 degrees. That would be complementary. Another word that we need to learn is called a supplementary. And supplementary are two angles that will add up to 180 degrees. Now, I have an example of supplementary angles. And anytime you have lines that intersect, like in this picture, the angles that are side by side or adjacent, another fancy word for you, these adjacent angles are supplementary. They add up to 180 degrees. So no matter how I arrange this, these angles will always add up to 180. So fun little trick, okay? Now, a third vocabulary word that I want to remind you of is called vertical angles. And that means if you have two angles that are directly across from each other, they are congruent, or they are the same. So angle BAE, I already know that this has to be 72 degrees because I know that its vertical angle over here is 72 degrees and they are the same. And I can use the angle tool just for fun and check on that. Boom. So these angles that are directly across are always the same no matter what, and we call those vertical angles. So you could also tell me what the missing angle over here, DAE, you could tell me what this is because it's vertical to this angle measure that we know is 112 degrees. So complementary adds up to 90. Supplementary adds up to 180. And angles that are across from each other are congruent. So there's some super helpful tricks for us. Now, I have a few examples that we can look at together. And so I want you to, in your own head, you can be thinking about what the right answer is. This is a chance for you to test yourself. So what is the measure of angle Z? You can think about it for a second. You're basically asking yourself, are these next to each other, supplementary? Do they add up to 180 degrees? Or are they congruent because they're vertical? So vertical angles or supplementary angles. And these are directly across from each other. They are vertical. So this ought to be 60. Got it. And this isn't an example that I necessarily just got done talking about, but I guess we could still take a peek at it. We have these angles that are next to each other, but I know that they have to all add up to 70, which means this should be 30. Let's get to an example we are more interested in. These angles are side by side, which means they must add up to 180 degrees. So this ought to be 120. Not as interested in this one. Are these next to each other, or are they across from each other? They are next to each other. They must add up to 180 degrees. It's got to be 50. So now I'm given the measure of some angles, 141. What is the measure of its supplementary angle? Well, supplementary means they must add up to 180 degrees. So what should that angle be? I'll let you think to yourself for a moment. And if you said 39, then you are correct. The measure of an angle is 68 degrees. What is the measure of its complementary angle? Well, complementary means these angles must add up to 90 degrees. 68, 78, 88, 22. All right, anyway, important review for some important vocabulary that we will be using quite a bit. So thanks for playing.